Hello my friends, I'm Kayla. These are the 23 books that I read in March and I'm going to tell you about them today. First, I'll pop up my little stats. I'm going to have a quarterly update in just a couple days where I actually go through all the books I read, which ones were my favorites, which ones stood out amongst all of the others, and actually talk through the stats, but here's just a little board just for fun for you and for me to stay organized. I've decided to organize it today because I always organize my wrap up in different ways just to keep things interesting for myself by genre, because I don't do that very often and I only read a couple genres this month. We've got a chunk of mystery, sci-fi, horror, nonfiction, and then a couple stragglers at the end. I also, as usual, got some fun questions from you. So at the end, I'm going to come back to these, but like what one should have been twice as long, which book should have been half as long, which book Rob would most likely enjoy, if any of these completed any buzzword challenges, which I haven't thought of, which one do you wish you could read for the first time again, and if I wish I had chosen any of these for the Literally Dead Book Club. So let's actually start with the Literally Dead Book Club pick. This wasn't for the month of March. The March's pick is The Spite House, but since the live show isn't going to be for another week, I'm not reading it until just before the live show. But for the month of February, we read Finley Donovan Jumps the Gun, which is the third book in the Finley Donovan series, which I feel like I've talked about endlessly at this point. Finley is a single mother. She's writing novels. She gets caught up in a murder for hire scheme and gets involved in all of these different things. In this book in particular, she's participating in a community police initiative teaching people how to like safely use guns, and she's entering it under the guise that she wants to do research for her book, but really it's that her and her partner Vero think that something shady is going on. There are different mysteries within the series. Obviously it would be a spoiler to talk about at this point. These are not standalone books. You cannot read them independently. It is like a story that continues throughout the entire series. I gave this a 3. I'm just not particularly hooked in the series anymore, which isn't new for me. Series is not typically my thing anyway. Being invested in the same characters for so long is a rare feeling for me to want to have. I thought this would be fun for the book club. Some people enjoyed it, some people didn't. Do I regret picking it? No, because I think it was fun to switch things up and do something that was a little cozier for the first time and also a series for the first time. Plus, so many people are into this right now that it just felt fun to get to read it with other people. Do I wish I had chosen any of my other mysteries for the book club? I don't think so. Though I enjoyed Game of Cones by Abby Collette, which is the second book in this series. I know a lot of people aren't loving it, and I think a big portion of it is like when I look at Finley Donovan, one of the biggest wins here is the side characters and how everybody is kind of fun. Like there are aggravating characters, but I guess the main sidekick friend really makes the series. And in this one, the sidekick best friend kind of ruins the series. There is a very obnoxious character who's constantly like misdirecting the entire plot, and not in a fun way. This character is like always accusing everyone and always coming up with the wildest scenarios. It's a little fun, but it's more just like, okay, like let Bronwyn actually figure this out. So in the first book, she is saving her family's ice cream shop. There is a murder that happens on the doorstep and she has to figure out who did it before her father gets implicated. In this one, she's not just saving the ice cream shop, she's trying to save an entire like neighborhood businesses from gentrification, and also there's a murder on her doorstep and she has to solve it before her friend is implicated. I think something Abby Collette does really, really well, but I know other people feel like is a little too much, is rehashing the mystery constantly. I love it because I will constantly forget who people are or what we figured out so far, and I also really like organization. So how like every 40 pages, Bronwyn will go, okay, let's get together and discuss everything we found out so far, who our culprits are, and what we think is happening. And then every time they like put more clues together, and I love that. This is probably my favorite cozy mystery series that actually fits within the category cozy mystery, because some of them don't so much, like the Four Aunties series. So this is Four Aunties in a Wedding by Jessie Q. Satanto. The first book is Dial A for Aunties, which I gave 5 stars and I love so much. This girl goes on a blind date, accidentally kind of kills him, and then her entire family spends the book hiding the body. There is a little bit of a romance in it, and in this one they are already getting married and the entire book takes place during their wedding day, and there's more extended family. There's another family there at the wedding, and there's something shady going on with them, and maybe it's like another group of people doing bad things and trying to cover it up. So now this family wants to figure out what's happening and stop them from maybe committing a crime at the wedding. Unfortunately, I, among many, many, many other readers, gave it like 2 stars because it's just really sad to read. Like, you want to be happy for Maddie and it's on her wedding day, but it's just too ridiculous and also melancholy read at the same time. It feels like it wants to be fun, but it's just sad because you're following her and she's constantly leaving her husband behind, her brand new husband, who we just want to see her like spending the day with. But she's constantly like, I have to go, like I'm busy, like I don't have time for this, I have to go solve this thing. And he's just left in the dust and doesn't know anything that's going on and just feels abandoned the whole day. And every time we flash back to him, he's just like, wish I could see my bride. As most cozy kind of series continue, they get more and more ridiculous, which should be a fun element, and that's what pulled me into these stories to begin with, how over the top they are. But for some reason, when they get this silly, I guess it starts to lose me, which I don't feel like is a fair thing to say, but it's what I'm saying. I also read A Perilous Undertaking by Deanna Raybourn, which is the second book in the Veronica Speedwell series. Listen, the chemistry between Veronica and Stoker is absolutely unmatched and will carry me throughout this entire series. So we're in the 1880s. In London, the first book, you know, it's a young woman. She's expected to have a guardian. She doesn't have anybody left in her family, and so she is entrusted under the care of this man named Stoker. They're both in similar kind of careers or interests, and there's somebody who has attempted to kidnap or murder her. She clearly has something more going on with her backstory that we get to find out slowly, and so he has to protect her. And so at some points they have like fake marriage is going on so they can convince people they're just average people and not on the run or anything. And I guess they're going to solve different mysteries throughout the series. So in this one, they have been given this information that a man has murdered this woman, and they believe, or are being told to believe, that he didn't really do it, and they're trying to figure out what really happened. It had a really fun plot. They were brought into all of these different societies of people. All the characters are very vivid, and yeah, I just want them to fall in love and be together and happy forever. It's not a romance series, but there is romance undertones. There's a lot of sexual innuendos. There's a lot of fun banter. It's just a good time. I also read, what is it called? A Good Day to Pie, which is the Magic, Lies, and Deadly Pies sequel. Maybe this is the one I would gravitate towards if I wanted to read something with the group, because it is a mystery book, but it also has a little bit of magic, which makes it fun. We have this woman who's entering a baking competition in the second book, and in the first one we find out she has this baking business where her pies have some kind of powers that she puts into them. So they can just make you really focus, they can make you study harder, they can make you better at sports, or they can kill you if you are a bad person. She is a murderer for hire. She also has a sidekick who's helping her vet things. There's a lot of moral dilemmas explored in the series, which is fun. And she is being hired to kill somebody who turns out to be the judge of this baking competition that she's entering. So she has to decide if she wants to do it. Before she gets to figure that out, deaths are already occurring on the baking competition. It's televised, and it's fun to follow all of like the week's baking. Like, it really gets into the competition element, which I really like. It talks about the eliminations, it talks about the process of baking. I don't think the series will be for everyone, but I find it really fun. And then I read Dead Dead Girls by Nekesa Afia. And this is set in 1920s Harlem, and we have our main character, Louise. I read this with no knowledge of what it even was or what the general consensus was, so I was so surprised when I went to Goodreads, and it has a pretty low Goodreads average rating. I think a 3.2. I found it to just be like a simple, nice, basic murder mystery. I gave it a 4. Have I even been talking about my ratings? Oh my god, I gave A Good Day to Pie 4 stars. I also gave A Perilous Undertaking 4 stars. I also gave this 4 stars, and maybe it was because I had just read a bunch of cozy mysteries that, though this isn't one, I was reading it through the lens of a cozy mystery. So everything that was silly and convoluted and ridiculous and simple, I was already in that like vibe, so I was really into it. Though we are dealing with much more serious subject matter. There's a much higher exploration of emotions and trudging through tragedy and trauma than a cozy mystery would have. But what's happening to her is she works at this speakeasy, and other Black girls at the speakeasy are being murdered, and she's working with a detective to figure out what happened. So like her getting into that scenario to begin with is pretty silly, her being entrusted with all of this information, the ease in which people will communicate what they think is going on with her. But I just thought it was fun following her around, learning about her family drama, and it was a fascinating story. Even if things were easy to figure out, there was a great female-female relationship at the heart of this as well that we got to see, and I thought it was solid. So that's all my mystery picks. Oh, one question somebody asked is, you mentioned wanting to read the fourth Finley book. How do you feel now that 5 through 7 have been announced? I'm absolutely going to read 4. I think it's great that this is a series because people love cozy mystery series. I think that maybe some of us are, I know it's not technically cozy, but a lot of us are newer to the cozy mystery world. And so we kind of are used to things wrapping up in mystery novels quicker. But for the cozy mystery community, I think it's great that the series is continuing on and on and on. I don't know that there are many mysteries of this style that I would ever want to continue past like 3 or 4 books in. So though I feel like my interest is definitely waning, and I'm probably going to stop at book 4 unless something wraps up in that and we're starting a new arc with like the next, you know, 2 books, 3 books, 4 books. I'm happy it's continuing, though I probably won't be. Now let's get into my sci-fi reads. So I pulled this out of my members TBR jar for the month. It's Several People Are Typing by Calvin Kosalki. I think I will be purchasing myself a copy of this, but this cover that I prefer. And I'm giving it a 4.5. Now I want to preface this whole thing with like, I don't know who I would recommend this to, and also the #1 word that I would use to define this book is stupid. I really think it's stupid. I think that word sounds harsh, but I want to set people up for the right expectations. Like if you typically like the weird stuff that I do, I don't even know if this is something that I would suggest to that group, because it really is just silly and pointless, and it's solely told in messages. So there's this like workplace app called Slack that I have had many years in. So I'm certain that contributed to my enjoyment of this. This guy gets his consciousness uploaded into Slack and he's trying to get out of it and he doesn't understand what's going on. So he's messaging all his coworkers, kind of describe it to them, and they're like, what are you talking about? Stop trying to get out of work. And so it's communication between him and the Slack bot, him and his coworkers. The coworkers are between and amongst themselves. But like, you know how you sometimes ask, you know, Alexa or Google a question, like, I'm trying to get to the help menu, like how to answer my question. And they're just like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, here's an article completely unrelated. That's his entire experience in here. He's trying to get out of it, but Slack obviously doesn't understand what he's trying to do. You get to learn about the company that they work for through these messages. It's like a PR marketing firm, and they're talking about the jobs that they're working on. They're assigning different tasks to people. But then some of the coworkers are, it's just like them calling in sick. And then you get like 10 people who are like, yeah, I'm sick too, I can't come in. And just the communication between coworkers on Slack, it's just so relatable, but obviously over the top and stupid. I really had so much fun. I cannot give it a 5. I don't know why. I can't call it an all-time favorite book, probably because of the stupidity. Next up, we've got How to Live Safely in a Science Fictional Universe by Charles Yu. This is a time travel kind of novel. This man, Charles Yu, the author, his father invented time travel, and now he is living in this little pocket of time, helping people with their time traveling technology difficulties, and also trying to find his father because he's been more or less abandoned. A lot of things go on here. It does feel like a slower book though. He is stuck in a time loop. He finds a book describing how to survive in a science fictional universe, and then discovers that he himself has written the book, but some of the book is blank because he has yet to write it. So he just has to figure a lot of things out, help himself in the future and the past. I gave it I think it was a 3.5 or 3.75. I thought it was really interesting. There's a lot of themes that time travel books typically touch on, like regret and feeling disconnected from other people and even your former self, depression. It's a very psychological sci-fi. It gets super convoluted intentionally. I think you're not supposed to really understand everything that's going on in here, which can come off like it's a little pretentious. Definitely got a little too messy, but it was fun to follow. He has like a robot friend, a dog, but a lot of it is just like internal thoughts. And I actually think I would answer the question, which book should have been half the length? This could have been a really fascinating novella, and then the little twists and turns might have been more impactful if you weren't waiting for so long. This isn't a long book. It's like 200 and let me double, 228 pages, but if it was 150, it could have packed a little bit more of a punch. Then we've got Binti by Nadia Korafor, which is African futurism, following Binti, who's been invited to this prestigious university on a different planet. She's the first of her people to be invited, and when she gets on this aircraft, she's meeting all the other people, getting to know them before they can really get into things. Bad things are happening on the ship. There is an alien race involved that is making things very difficult, and it is at its heart a survival story. I gave this a tentative 5 because this isn't, unlike some other novella series that I feel like can stand alone in their first book and be read and enjoyed just as that, I don't feel like I had a complete reading experience. This feels like, you know, the first chapter of an epic sci-fi story. And once I finish the trilogy, I believe I'll be able to come back and give it a really concrete 5. It had great tension, great descriptions. The cast was really thoroughly described in such few amount of pages. And I overall just loved the writing. Now let's get into horror. All of these, and one that I don't have with me, but I'll pop it up here. Let's review it first, I guess, since it's already here. All of these I read for a horror exploration video where I read author recommendations. And again, the question of would I have rather picked one of these for the Literally Did book club, the answer is no, and I have a reason for each one. This one, because it's a short story collection, we've never done that before. I think this one is too long. I think these ones are too weird. I think these two are too gruesome. And this one, just because I didn't love it, so I don't wish I picked it, because then I would have had to do a live show about a book that I didn't love. So The Ones That Got Away by Stephen Graham Jones, I did talk about each individual story and my ratings for them in the vlog, so I won't touch on that here because I definitely do not remember. I overall gave it a 4, which is surprising because the first half of it, a lot of the stories were 3s, even 2s, but then the second half of the collection, I loved almost all of the stories. Some of them were even connected, which I really like, and a lot of them fell into the typical Stephen Graham Jones unique style of not giving you all the answers, not leaving you satisfied, and not even telling you how to feel by the end of it, just putting an idea out there and leaving you with it. It's a style that really works for me, and I would recommend the audiobook. That is the only way I read it, so I can't disrecommend the physical reading experience, but anyway. Then we've got The Grip of It by Jack Gems, which is a haunted house story. We have a couple who is starting a new life. It is equally about the haunting of the house as much as it is them exploring their relationship, trying to stay connected, get jobs, work and be happy in their jobs, and overcome gambling addiction. Like, there's a lot of things going on, and the horror itself, the haunted house is not like scary, gory, frightening, actively frightening things happening, like seeing a figure walking through the house, hearing creaking in the night. It's more strange psychological things. So waking up with bruises and not remembering how you got them. You're in a room in the house and suddenly you're in a different room and you don't know how you got there. I guess you'd call it more of a literary horror. It feels like a psychological torment. I gave it 4 stars. Again, it ends in a not really satisfying way. You're left with a lot of questions, and I often love that. There's a big sense of impending doom, and just watching them navigate coming together throughout all of this difficult stuff. It's a fascinating story, in my opinion. Then we've got The Return by Rachel Harrison, which I also gave 4 stars, which both of these are quite a bit higher than the average person. These tend to get a lot of 2s because they are weirder. This one in particular, the pace is just so absolutely strange. You have a group of friends. There's 4 women. One of them has been missing for the last 2 years. She comes back, doesn't remember a thing. Clearly she went through something because she is actively different. She's acting strange, kind of monstrous. Her friends are really questioning things, but that is the bulk of the book, is just them communicating with each other, saying, she's acting weird. How can we help her? How can we support her? Like, let's talk about her behind her back, and then let's talk about our other friend behind her back, but let's also like feel strongly about our friendship even though we don't always get along. Like, this is such a strong bond that we have, and they're just talking about their connection for so much of the book. A lot of dialogue. The scenes are very lengthy, and I can't explain why I loved it so much. And then when we get into the horror feels like it goes on and on and on as well, exploring what did happen to this woman and how it has affected her, and also leaves you with a lot of questions and doesn't feel like it answered everything that you expect it to. It was bizarre. My word for this is bizarre. Bizarre pace, bizarre focus, bizarre in its actual horror. And the descriptions do get unexpectedly gruesome. Like, it was just a bizarre time. Now let's talk Our Share of Night by Mariana Enriquez. This is translated by Megan McDowell. It's not just that it's too long, it's that it doesn't super fit well into just the horror genre. And while we've read things that span different genres, if you're looking for just a horror experience, it is far too long waiting for more horror. It's just horror slipped into it, but it is more fantasy in my opinion. We're following a couple different characters, a couple different timelines, a couple different storylines, but a lot is focused on Juan and his son, Gaspar. And they are involved in this organization that focuses on immortality, believes in immortality, will do whatever it takes to gain immortality. And Juan has escaped, knows that he's going to die soon, and is preparing everyone in his life, including his son, for his imminent death, what to do when that happens. He set up all these types of protections for his son so they cannot pull him into the immortality situation, because it involves like maybe his consciousness being passed along or somebody else, like they're sharing mortality. It kind of feels like a short story collection, which is interesting because I know that's what she's written before, and I do absolutely plan to pick them up. But since we're following a couple different people, they all have the same idea, but it oftentimes doesn't feel like a linear narrative. We're hopping around different places, and if you really enjoy getting into the mind of a character, it's interesting how we will flash to a completely different situation soon after. This is one of those books that is too smart for me to explain. Like, just read the synopsis. I gave it a 4.5. I think it was so incredibly smart, and the horrors of reality as well as supernatural things are all involved in here. There's a focus on dictatorship. This is based in Argentina. There's a lot of historical context that seeps into the pages. There's so much time spent on descriptions. You really feel like the atmosphere is so well fleshed out. It's a very strange, epic novel, not like anything I've read before. The Devil Takes You Home by Gabino Iglesias is about a man named Mario who's in a difficult situation in life. His financial situation, marriage situation, life is just kind of in shambles. He's recently lost his child, and he kind of is willing to do anything at this point, take whatever job comes his way to get out of the, at least financial situation that he's in. It seems like he's kind of on a suicide mission in a way. He doesn't have a lot of self-preservation, but throughout the pages you can feel that he wants to have the will to go on. The plot itself follows him and a couple other men going on a road trip to take out this like Mexican cartel. They need to hijack the shipment itself, and they're going after some bad people by being bad people themselves. It is very violent. There is horrific imagery throughout this. If you're looking for true action-packed horror, it's here. There's a lot of the scenes with including violence against children were I almost like couldn't continue. There's a lot of supernatural stuff going on, a lot of religious influence, why people are doing what they're doing. It set out to deliver exactly what it intended, I think. It was just not my favorite type of plot to follow, and that continues on into the next couple books that I chose not to rate. We've got The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum and Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Bright. I know when I read these, people were saying like, this is not the best introduction to splatterpunk. This wasn't my introduction to splatterpunk, and I mean, I have established that I don't like splatterpunk, so it's fine. I think something about my age has also progressed me less towards real life horrors. So there's no doubt that these are gruesome and disturbing, and that's why I don't want to rate them. Assigning a number seems so weird because my enjoyment of these was low, but they gave the exact horror that they promised, and you're supposed to be disgusted and horrified, which I was, but they were not on my TBR. They were selected for me. I was down to give it a go. I didn't think they would be my favorites because of the controversial like ratings I've seen out there, and I was correct in that. We've got a girl in the neighborhood who has been held captive by a bunch of people in the neighborhood and is being tortured and abused. It really went there with the horrific imagery and the perspective that the author decided to tell this from a young boy in the neighborhood who I find I really questioned his interpretation of what was going on. In Exquisite Corpse, it's about serial killers and them finding a new victim. It was like a neurotic, gruesome horror. The descriptions of everything was just wild. The descriptions of their necrophilia and cannibalism did exactly what they intended. You're not supposed to like anybody involved, and I never want to think about these again. But rating books that feel like they're not meant for me, and I picked them up in like inauthentic ways, not expecting to necessarily like. This month was just full of weird reading, and that continued into my nonfiction. And for the same reasons, I'm not rating these. So we've got Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach, How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell, 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman, and Just Work by Kim Scott. If you are somebody who is healing from trauma and dealing with issues with your self-worth, first of all, I'm sorry, but this is something that might benefit you. I don't know. If you're somebody who's read every book out there about productivity and wanting to hear from somebody who relates to that and wants to give you reasons to just live your life and live in the moment, then this might be for you. If you're somebody who needs your perspective changed on consumerism and you're questioning your place in productivity and political resistance, this might be for you. If you are like a leader within your company and you're thinking it's not very inclusive and you want to know how to be more inclusive and you want to open your mind to how people outside of your own experience are treated in the workplace and you don't really know where to start, this one might be for you. Because I agreed with a lot of the things that these books were saying, but I didn't have any great takeaways myself personally. This didn't change my perspective on anything or give me any real tips because I didn't necessarily need them for who they were. I wasn't who they were intended for. I don't feel that I can rate them in a genuine way that feels right to me. And I know that ratings are subjective, reviews are subjective. I should be able to rate them just on personal experience, but I can't because of the ways that I ended up picking them up, which is for a video and not for my own like authentic desire for self-improvement in these specific avenues. This one, I can say I at least appreciated the way it was written, the construction of it, how organized it was. That made it for a very enjoyable reading experience itself. I definitely found myself nodding along to a lot of the ideas that were brought forth in here. But because they're not the nonfiction that I typically recommend, I don't feel like I'm in a place that I can accurately recommend them to anybody. So look for other places for that. Tons of people have rated and reviewed those. And then I read Dear Sinthurin by Akwaeke Emezi. This was such a different reading experience than I feel like I've ever had or am typically looking for with a memoir. Most times when I pick up a memoir, it's from an author that I don't know and it's just been recommended. It's like a life experience mixed with a learning lesson. There is a very specific memoir style that I read. I don't really read memoirs from people I'm already familiar with. And the reason that I avoid so many, most all celebrity memoirs was highlighted in here. And the things that were talked about are things that I typically avoid, which is like the hunt, the desire, the need for fame and money and awards. And I just didn't know that that's what, okay, first let me say, sorry, back up. This was a 4-star. This author's writing is incredible. It's always incredible. And in here it was so just, I got to appreciate it so much because it was real life experience. So obviously there are personal anecdotes and stories. And with that, it was very clear and intentional, the life experience that they wanted to share. But at the same time, the writing got to be the beautiful poetic style that you're used to with their writing. Because I've read all of this author's work, I thought a memoir would be a great idea. A lot of times the memoirs that I pick up are childhood, formative years, like early stuff, big impacts in how it's affected the rest of their life. And this was that, but it was also and mostly the active time in their life publishing books, the money that they got, the offers they got from publishers, you know, actually writing the stories and what it felt like and the pressure involved, putting your creative work out for other people to interpret, the swift move from having nothing to having everything at your fingertips and buying that mansion and getting everything you've ever wanted. This desire for recognition and awards. And it was just so strange reading an author's experience writing the stories that I have already consumed from them. And with that, it felt like I was reading a kind of celebrity memoir, talking about the notoriety they have gained and how they feel very deserved of it and how they've been waiting for it for so long, and how Akwaeke describes themselves as a god, as a non-human. As I spoke about with Freshwater, which you can tell is a very personal experience, self-referential, it's explored more in here and described how personal that really was. And like I talked about with that, it's really not my place in like with the Western gaze to comment on the spirituality involved, something I could never claim to understand the intricacies of or what is even really being discussed in here. The writing itself, I feel like, is appropriate to talk about, which I found absolutely stunning. It's just my style of messy kind of letter writing. Every one of them feels disconnected from another. They are written to somebody and exploring a different idea or thought process, different experience that Akwaeke has been through, but they do feel all tied together by the end. It's very raw and honest and explores like attempted suicide and homelessness and abuse and really difficult things. It was very startling and interesting and odd seeing how an author sees themselves after reading so much of their work. And lastly, my general fiction and fiction with weird, fabulous ideas. So The Girls I've Been by Tess Sharp, I ended up giving a 3.5. This is a YA kind of mystery where we have a girl who grew up with a con artist mother, and she put her in all of these situations where she had to be different girls and they would steal money from people and do different things. It was a very abusive childhood, and in the current day story, we're following her in a bank heist. She has been like held captive by a couple people in the bank with some of her friends, and also various other people in the bank. And because of the way she grew up, she has a certain mindset and decides that no matter the cost, she's going to get them all out of it. It's this survival story. It's an action-packed story, but it has frequent and long flashbacks to the lives that she has lived before and the experiences that she had. They're all tied together because she's questioning the heist itself and what's going on and who these people are, and everything gets all like connected and understood, and she uses her skills that she has been forced horrifically developing and kind of takes power back and helps everybody. And it was an interesting story. It's one like, or it's been nominated for Goodreads Awards. It has a really high average Goodreads rating. That's what I said in my video, is that if you are already interested in the plot, I think it's going to be exactly what you think it's going to be, and it's going to be great. For me, it was a 3.5 because I just wasn't interested in the plot to begin with, and I didn't select it for myself. A book I did select for myself, and the last book that I read of the month is We Ride Upon Sticks by Quan Berry. Last month I reread Bunny, and this month I reread this, and maybe this is my year of rereading all the books that I consider my top 10 favorites of all time and like solidifying them as that. Because with this one, I definitely did. It's everything I remember. It's just as good as I remember. If you've never heard me pitch it, we're following the 1989 Danvers, Massachusetts field hockey team. This story is influenced by the Salem witch trials. The girls themselves have been influenced by the Salem witch trials. They discovered this book that talked about the women at the heart of that, and they decide they're going to start this notebook where they are going to get everything that they want, and they're going to take the powers from this notebook and from their team and sign their name in this book. And they do start to then win all of their field hockey games. And it's just about this year of beautiful teamwork and success, and every chapter features like the game that they're playing, Danvers versus Salem. And so it's got just as much sports as it needs to be a sports story, but it is magical, and it's not like dark witchy magical. It's quirky and weird and silly. It's written in like first person plural, a collective voice from the team, though each character gets their own focus and backstory, and we learn about their family dynamics, their friendships, their relationships. But then we have you know, physical items that are also personified and characterized in the book. Like someone's hair is a literal character and we're just following them. The writing just really works for me, and a lot of people will say it's overwritten and it's too long, and that's what I loved about it. It's thorough, it's strange. I would be specific about who I recommend it to, though I know I've influenced a lot of people to pick it up, and it's generally gone well. So that's everything that I read. Now, I want to run through those questions again. If I could read one for the first time again, I think the only one I would pick is this one, because technically this was my worst reading month of the year so far. I only had one new 5-star, and that was Binti, and the other 5-star was a reread. So I think I would just want to reread this again for the first time. If I could recommend one to Rob, it's so hard because I feel like he would enjoy maybe How to Live in a Science Fictional Universe the most, but the one I think would benefit him the most might be How to Do Nothing. Now, I said which one should have been half as long. Which one should have been twice as long? Maybe 4,000 Weeks, because I feel like so much of this book was actually, a lot of the nonfiction I read spent a lot of the time in them convincing me why I need to take the advice of the book. It was constantly like, here's why this is important. Here's why you need to benefit from what I'm saying. And it wasn't as many like tips and actual advice as I was expecting. So time management and like how to live in the moment and enjoy your life. I feel like he was just talking a lot about how it's important to enjoy your life. And maybe if we had 300 more pages, he could have got into more applicable steps. Which cover color would make the best paint for a room? I don't know that I have one. I read a lot of white books, and this is my least favorite color. I don't know that I would want my walls to be like this, and probably not any of these. I'm left with burgundy and purple, and maybe these could have their place somewhere. Like a theater painted this deep burgundy would be beautiful. Have I completed any buzzword challenges? I'm just thinking with these specific books, not this whole year. So for Life and Death in January, we've got How to Live. Oh, jumps. Jumps for the verb. I don't think I've done secret. I don't think there's any emotions here. No flavors either. I didn't do other. No weather. No body parts. Well, corpse. I guess corpse could be a body part. For game related words, maybe sticks, because they are field hockey sticks. Yeah, I guess if I was trying to complete my buzzword in 1 month, I horrifically failed with that. So that's that. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you're gonna read any of these or you already have any of your thoughts on my thoughts, and I'll see you soon. Bye.